Good morning. We begin with shocking news from Utah, where conservative commentator and activist Charlie Kirk was assassinated yesterday. Kirk, the 31-year-old founder of Turning Point USA, was shot and killed while speaking to a crowd of students at Utah Valley University in Orem. The incident occurred in broad daylight on Wednesday afternoon. Kirk was on stage as part of his American Comeback Tour when a single gunshot struck him in the neck. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Authorities have launched a massive manhunt for the shooter, and at this time, no suspect has been identified, and a motive remains unknown. Charles Kirk, who would have turned 32 next month, rose to prominence over the last decade as a powerful and often polarizing voice in conservative politics. He founded Turning Point USA in 2012 at the age of 18. Building it into a national force that mobilized thousands of young voters and established a significant presence on college campuses. His fiery brand of political advocacy made him a leading figure in the modern conservative movement and a close ally of President Donald Trump. Born in a suburb of Chicago, Kirk was known for his energetic rallies and prolific media presence, where he championed conservative causes. The assassination has sent shockwaves across the nation, drawing immediate condemnation and expressions of grief from political figures on all sides. Law enforcement officials in Utah are urging anyone with information to come forward as they piece together the events that led to this tragic act of violence. The investigation is in its earliest stages, and we will bring you more details as they become available. The tragic death of Charlie Kirk is a stark reminder of the dangers of political violence in the country, a theme that is also central to a high-profile trial beginning today in Florida. Opening statements are set to get underway this morning in the federal trial of Ryan Routh, the man accused of attempting to assassinate then-presidential candidate Donald Trump in September of last year. After 3 days of intense questioning, a jury of 12, along with 4 alternates, was seated on Wednesday in Fort Pierce. The panel consists of 6 white women, 4 white men, 1 black woman, and 1 black man. Routh, who is representing himself in court, faces a potential life sentence on charges including the attempted assassination of a major presidential candidate, assaulting a federal officer, and multiple gun violations. The jury selection process was unconventional, with Routh himself questioning potential jurors on topics ranging from the war in Gaza to their views on saving a turtle in the road, prompting U.S. District Judge Aileen Cannon to label his questions politically charged. The prosecution alleges that on September 15, 2024, Routh hid in the shrubbery at Trump's West Palm Beach Golf Club and was detected by a Secret Service agent as he aimed a rifle at the former president. After agents opened fire, Routh fled, abandoning his weapon, but was apprehended a short time later. The trial is expected to last up to 4 weeks. While the justice system addresses an act of political violence from last year, lawmakers in Washington are engaged in their own fierce battles, albeit of a legislative nature. The House of Representatives passed its version of the annual National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, on Wednesday night, but it did so along stunningly partisan lines. The must-pass bill, which sets the policy and budget for the Department of Defense, was approved by a vote of 231 to 196. For decades, the NDAA has been a rare example of bipartisan cooperation, but that tradition has eroded. In last night's vote, 192 Democrats voted against the bill, with only 17 crossing the aisle to support it. The deep division was fueled by a series of Republican-led amendments focused on divisive social issues. Democrats spent hours railing against these provisions, which were ultimately included in the final text. Among them was an amendment from Representative Nancy Mace of South Carolina that places limits on spaces that transgender service academy cadets can access. Another, from Representative Corey Mills of Florida, prevents the display of pride flags or other ideological banners on military installations. Representative Adam Smith, the top Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee, announced he would oppose the bill if these amendments were adopted, criticizing Republicans for undermining a 65-year tradition of placing national security above politics. The legislation for fiscal year 2026 now moves to the Senate, which will craft its own version before the two chambers must negotiate a compromise to send to President Trump's desk. Many of the contentious amendments that fractured the defense bill debate centered on transgender issues. That same cultural flashpoint was the subject of a decision from the Supreme Court on Wednesday. The High Court rejected an emergency request from South Carolina to enforce its state law banning transgender students from using public school bathrooms that correspond with their gender identity. The decision is a temporary setback for the state, as the court's brief, unsigned order means a lower court injunction blocking the law will remain in place while the underlying lawsuit proceeds. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit had previously granted the injunction at the request of a ninth-grade student identified in court documents as John Doe, who wishes to use the boys' bathroom. Attorneys for the student argued that no other students had ever complained about sharing the restroom with him. While the order was a victory for the student, three of the court's conservative justices, Samuel Alito, Clarence Thomas, and Neil Gorsuch, noted that they would have granted South Carolina's request to enforce the ban. The decision offers little insight into the court's long-term thinking on the issue, but it comes as the justices are preparing to hear a major case this term on state bans against transgender athletes participating in school sports, ensuring the court will remain at the center of this contentious national debate. While the Supreme Court navigates these divisive social issues, and the House struggles with partisan gridlock, the Senate is preparing for its own procedural showdown. Senate Majority Leader John Thune announced this week that Republicans will move forward with the so-called nuclear option to change the chamber's rules and speed up the confirmation of President Donald Trump's nominees. In an op-ed, the South Dakota Republican argued the move is necessary because Democrats have engaged in unprecedented obstruction, forcing time-consuming procedural votes on even non-controversial nominees, who are eventually confirmed with large bipartisan margins. The nuclear option refers to a maneuver that allows the majority party to reinterpret or change Senate rules with a simple 51-50 with a simple 50 vote majority rather than the 60-vote supermajority typically required to end debate on most matters. This would effectively lower the threshold for confirming most of the president's judicial and executive branch appointments. This is not a new tactic in the escalating partisan wars. In 2013, Democrats led by Harry Reid used the nuclear option to confirm most executive and judicial nominees. In 2017, Republicans under Mitch McConnell expanded it to include Supreme Court justices. Thune's move signals that the Republican majority is prepared to once again alter the Senate's long-standing traditions to overcome what they see as Democratic obstruction and ensure President Trump can staff his administration and the federal judiciary.